So for you, it must be incredibly surreal because you never set out to have a big audience. This isn't something that you chased or pursued. You tell us a little bit about who was Rukshan prior to COVID-19.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, I mean, I never set out for any of this stuff. And prior to COVID-19, I was very busy focusing on my business that I'd been working on for upwards of a decade now. That's majority of my focus was on my business. And I think for a lot of Victorians, until COVID, their focus was on everything else but government, for instance, in Victoria, right?
Exactly.
We're so lucky to be living, very lucky to be living in Australia, in Victoria. We hardly had to think about our government because, they don't necessarily, there's issues there, but they don't necessarily define your life to the extent that it's been happening, right? So I was just getting on with life and, trying to take, my business higher and higher in terms of what I want to achieve with that. And obviously, with everything that went down, it really made me kind of, I guess, retool refocus myself and organically, use some of the things that my skill, for instance, in the field, especially in the creative field initially, to make sense of everything that was happening around me. And I've told other people, like some people took up knitting. People did other different things during that time off, right? That initial time off. They were telling us on the TV, this is the things you can do at home. And for me, it was like, okay, I'll make some memes or this kind of thing. Like that's kind of where it kind of came from.
That was your outlet. That was your coping strategy for what was going on.
Yeah, that was my outlet. Obviously, like, even though I'm working in an industry that's not necessarily related to politics, as you know by now, that in the wedding industry, as an individual, you're always to some extent engaged with politics, and I think that's been a passion of mine throughout my life. So this just kind of helped me look into what's going on in Victoria more, and I didn't like what I was seeing, so that kind of helped me, push me to do what I'm doing, because the actual real Rukshan page, I had started that in 2003. So that had laid dormant for, 2013, sorry.
That makes more sense. I was going to say that must have been on MySpace, 2003.
No, I did have a political MySpace as well, but 2013 is actually when I started that page, and for a long time it just lay dormant. So I never kind of got it off the ground, and then all this kind of transpired.
Okay, already I want to take this conversation in two different directions, but I'm going to stick with Rukshan before COVID. I want to talk about the political side of Rukshan before COVID in a moment, because I didn't know that. So that's interesting. But let me take for a moment. You've been almost. It was published as an insult. It was clearly intended to be an insult, but you've been called the wedding photographer, or the wedding videographer. So I did my time in wedding videography. It turns out I was rubbish at it. Wedding videography sucks. Like it is, and photography as well. It is such hard work, and you have to get it right every single freaking time. So was that the core of your business before you went into, before COVID kind of shut that down and you pivoted from there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've been doing this for 11 years now in that industry. And after, 6-7 years into it, kind of doing a more like a managerial role and overseeing type of role as well. So it's not so much always working in the field of overseeing business. So it's like any small business. There's lots of things that go into it, right? But yeah, like obviously doing, wedding videography and wedding photography, you would think that it's a very kind of niche thing and it's very focused on, you just think of typical things about a wedding. But the thing is, in a wedding, there's so much to learn, right? There's so much, different characters, different drama. It's very political. Sometimes there's lots of different layers to a wedding. and dealing with people. And in many ways, a wedding is political.
Yeah. So have you ever worked a wedding where at the end of the wedding, the bride and groom were not married?
I have done weddings where, for instance, the groom hasn't shown up or the bride hasn't shown up. So done weddings like this. But yeah, like obviously, once you do hundreds of weddings, you go through a gamut of different experiences. But the majority of weddings are pretty straightforward in the sense that, it happens and it's a marriage, it's done in the main. Yeah. So
I had one. Sorry.
No, go for it. Go.
I was just going to say, I had one very memorable occasion where I had gone to the bride and photographed. I'd gone to the groom and videoed. Gone to the groom and videoed. Got all the rings, got all the flowers and the bouquets and all the stuff you got to get as the wedding videographer. Showed up to the actual wedding ceremony, and something had happened in between when I left the groom's place and the ceremony, where the bride had found out, as best as I could tell, because I never got the full story, that the groom had been cheating on her. And so she shows up to the ceremony and she just comes barreling down the aisle. Forget like the music and the bridesmaids and the dad on her arm and everything. She just comes barreling down with a head full of steam. And she's, what the fuck did you do? What the fuck did you do? Coming down the aisle of the church in her wedding gown at the groom. And they did not end up married. Let's just put it that way. And I never got paid for the job, unfortunately. So it can get really interesting sometimes. But I've got to say, it does explain your stamina, because wedding videos and wedding photography is genuinely difficult and genuinely long hours. And the stuff that you did with, particularly when the tradie protest started, and it was day after day after day, your physical stamina is phenomenal. I have to ask, do you play like sports and stuff outside of work?
No, actually, like you said, I attribute to this stamina to my experience doing weddings. So on a typical week for us, for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we would usually start around 5 a.m. and finish around 1 a.m. and then do it again the next day and the next day. So you are doing continuous days of on your feet, walking around with cameras.
20 hours.
So you get you get used to it, and that's kind of where I've built my stamina in terms of being behind the camera. And I saw some comments afterwards after I did those streams, people saying he hasn't taken a bathroom break or any of this kind of stuff. And some wedding you don't get the opportunity, so you learn to keep going, and you learn not to eat food, and you're kind of just engrossed in that what's happening, because your focus as someone who's documenting an event is purely just about documenting, and you kind of lose yourself in that moment. So when I approach these kind of live streams or covering a protest, whatever it is, I'm kind of engrossed in that, visually in that moment, and seeing what I can capture. And it has to be, for me, it has to be continuous. Like I'm just, I can't stop. So I just keep going.
Well, more recently, I've stopped bothering with my own live streams for the most part. And when they're at the Shrine on the Wednesday with all the tradie protests on the Wednesday, my focus when I showed up was literally to hold your camera for you and to try and give you a bit of a break, because this was your third freaking massive day. And you knew that I was coming in for that purpose, and I found you, and you were like, oh no, I'm good, and you were good. I ended up holding the camera for maybe a grand total of 4 or 5 minutes over the entire hours that I was there, and this was on the back of you having walked across the Westgate Bridge, and your rig is not light. You've got a handle that then has a gimbal on it, which stabilizes the camera, that then has your DSLR or mirrorless or whatever it is, I don't know what it is, camera on that, and then on the side you've got your phone. This rig, and then you got batteries in your pockets and all kinds of stuff going on. Like, this rig is not lightweight. So massive respect to you, mate. Like, you deserve every single bit of respect that you've been getting.